If Asia continues to grow on its recent trajectory, it could, by 2050, account for more than half of the global gross domestic product. Its per capita income could rise sixfold and be similar to European levels today. It thus holds the promise of making some 3 billion additional Asians affluent by today's standard. Asia would then regain the dominant global economic position it held some 250 years ago, before the Industrial Revolution. That is why some call this century the Asian century. But while this promising outcome is plausible, it doesn't imply that the path ahead is just doing more of the same. For us to be able to realize the Asian century, there are major changes necessary for the region, involving, according again to the ADB, first, national strategic and policy actions. Second, collective regional actions to bridge the national and global agendas. And third, Asia's interactions with the global community. I can't agree more with the Asian Development Bank. With regard to national strategic and policy actions, one of the challenges that I think is most important is to ensure that economic growth in Asia will be able to sustain the social and environmental fabric in a responsible manner. As our economic engines drive all of Asia to first world status, we must not do so on the backs of the poor, nor at the expense of our environment. To achieve equitable, sustainable growth, there must be collective regional action. And fortunately, such collective actions are enhanced by the growing interdependence of the Asian economies and free trade arrangements. Interdependence among Asian economies is replacing export dependence on America and Europe, because, for one thing, of the emergence of China as a world power and major market. Asia should be delighted with the growth of China. We should welcome the surge in economic growth and development as a healthy development for our region. In the Philippines, for one, we have benefited from the growth of China. It has helped lift up our nation by providing a good market. China is investing billions in Asia. It is a strong trading partner with the rest of Asia. Its internal market demands and domestic consumption is having a direct and positive impact on Asian nations in terms of job creation, investment, and balance of trade. We should hope it continues. As China becomes a true political and economic giant, its obligations to its neighbors also increase, separate from its obligations to its own citizens. Ascendance onto the world stage carries implications not just for economic development, but also for the management of our environment on a sustainable basis and for maintaining broader peace and stability in the region and the world. Speaking of peace and stability, it is vital to the peace and prosperity of Asia that Korea, Japan, and China maintain strong and friendly relations. We are happy to hear about the recent talks among the three Asian giant economies. In ASEAN, we hope for greater economic integration with the robust economies, China, Japan, and Korea. ASEAN, to which the Philippines belongs, has taken several important steps forward that put us squarely on the path to create a regional community by 2015, most notably the assigning of the ASEAN Charter in 2008. As part of this charter, we have pledged to become an integrated trading bloc by 2015. We are working towards the creation of a single market with free movement of goods, ideas, and skilled talent, with common product standards, marginal transaction costs, stable and harmonized policy environment, and strengthened regional linkages and connectivity. Through these multiple layers of integration, we ultimately hope to bring long-term peace and prosperity to the people of the ASEAN community. ASEAN has taken a bold step forward. This is the first step toward even closer political, security, and economic engagement. It will strengthen ASEAN and the ties with our special partners such as Korea, China, and Japan. As ASEAN unity is reinforced, it continues to nurture its relations with key partners in the region, South Korea, China, and Japan. ASEAN has forged FTAs with the +3 countries and India, which will eventually deepen integration and interdependence at the regional level. Ladies and gentlemen, with all of this happening, with Asia as the growth engine for the development of the world, with the increasing interdependence within Asia, isn't it time for an Asian identity? Isn't it time to harness Asia's potential, capitalize on its resources, and give the Pan-Asian region a stronger voice in shaping the world economic order? The best way for multilateral cooperation is to think outside the regional context, outside of ASEAN, outside of ASEAN +3. The question isn't whether a larger pan-regional body than the regional blocks we have today is necessary. The question is rather, will we be stronger with a more united region? An Asian community will strengthen our economy, security, and prosperity. At a time in the world when there are strains on alliances, from the Middle East to the World Trade Organization, and when we are just emerging from one of the most powerful economic downturns seen in modern history, it is essential that new vital alliances be forged to keep the world stable and strong. Some sort of Asian community would certainly be a bold step in that direction. We should envision an economic community of Asia which would be continent-wide, to include East Asia and the Pacific, but also South Asia and Central Asia. This will maximize growth, trade, investment, and financial stability in the Asian region and help address the risks and challenges in the path toward the Asian century. An economic community of Asia would be the best way for multilateral cooperation in trade and investment and finance issues in the context of leading the development of the world economy. In the area of trade and investments, areas for multilateral cooperation pan-Asia-wide could include promotion of open markets, supporting the multilateral trading system and objectives of the Doha Round, and increasing direct capital investment flows within the region. On finance, the economic community of Asia could address currency volatilities, strengthen the credit market, and develop surveillance mechanisms. The economic community of Asia would also need to consider macroeconomic policy coordination in order to sustain the growth engine of Asia to lead the development of the world economy. The Jeju Forum could be the venue for percolating this idea in the years to come. This would be an innovative contribution of the Jeju Forum to the growth engine of Asia as it leads the development of the world economy. And when someday we do achieve that Asian or Pan-Asian community, we can recall and remember that the Jeju Forum had a great contribution to that idea and its implementation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, President Arroyo, for providing us with such an insightful views on the community building, interdependence, and the Asian identity. Next, we turn to Prime Minister Han Sung-soo. Please give him a big round of applause.
Your Excellency, Madam President, Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me a great pleasure to speak to you on this auspicious occasion of the 10th anniversary of the Jeju Forum. When the first Jeju Peace Forum was launched 10 years ago, I was Korea's foreign minister, and in that capacity, I had the pleasure of sponsoring this forum. The Jeju Forum has since then made a great stride, and from this year expands its sphere of influence and interest to include prosperity in addition to peace. I am pleased to note that Jeju Forum has been rapidly becoming one of the influential global forums in this region. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the co-host of this conference, Jeju Special Self-Governing Province, International Peace Foundation, and East Asia Foundation for their contribution in making the Jeju Forum as one of the most exciting regional forums. I wish to thank Governor Woo Gun-min and Ambassador Han Taek-gyu, President of Jeju Peace Institute, for their kind invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, today I would like to share with you some of my personal reflections on two major points. First, where Northeast Asia may be headed for over the next decades, and the critical drivers that are likely to shape intra-regional dynamics, and given these dynamics, how to conceptualize the formation of a closer cooperative association or a green cooperation to cope with the challenge of climate change on which the future of humanity so critically depends. Let me begin by delineating some of the more visible as well as invisible forces and currents that could become increasingly important in the shaping of a new Northeast Asia. At the turn of the 19th century, Northeast Asia was in the throes of cataclysmic changes forced by the first encounter between the Sino-centric world order that prevailed throughout much of Northeast Asia and the great powers of Europe and, to a lesser degree, United States. The rapid decline of the Qing dynasty and the corresponding rise to power of Japan meant that for the first time in Asian history, China's role at the epicenter of Northeast Asian order was being supplanted by Japan, the first regional order power to have successfully undertaken political, social, and economic reforms, as well as to have successfully imported and implemented advanced weapons and military technology patterned after the West. This power transition not only profoundly affected domestic politics in China, Korea, Japan, but also for Northeast Asia's geopolitics. It set the stage for the Sino-Japanese War of 1894-95, followed by the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 and 5, and then eventual outbreak of the Second World War. Thus, from the 19th century until the mid-20th century, sustained enduring conflicts became the hallmarks of the regional strategic picture. For the Chinese, the period from the Opium War until the foundation of the People's Republic of China in 1949 has been referred to as the century of shame. For Korea, the loss of sovereignty and ensuing colonialization under Japan, forced partition in 1945, and then the outbreak of the disastrous Korean War, started by North Korea in 1950, were triple scars that continue to resonate even today. For Japan, rise to the preeminence through wars with China and Russia compelled it to reshape Asia in a way that led to the ambitious so-called Greater East Asia cooperative sphere, which was ultimately crushed by the Allied forces during the Second World War. However, within a span of some two generations, Northeast Asia has risen from the shadows of war and poverty to become a key political and geo-economic center. From the scourges of poverty and the vestiges of war, Northeast Asia has become one of the principal economic engines of the world economy. China has rapidly grown into the second largest economy in the world, surpassing Japan, which is still one of the most industrialized economies in the world. Korea has transformed itself from a marginal agricultural country to a robust high-tech manufacturing economy within a span of just one generation. Here are the numbers. Korea, China, Japan together accounts for 18.4% of global GDP in 2010, a jump from 16.0% in 2000. When combined with ASEAN countries, it rose to 20.7% in 2010 from 17.77% in 2000. When India is included, it rose from 19.3% to 23.1% in 2010. The combined trade share was 21.5% in 2011 and 30% when ASEAN was added. Three countries' foreign exchange reserves amounted to $42 trillion, accounting to 49.2%, almost half of world reserves last year. It is almost certain that the share of global GDP and trade of Northeast Asia will continue to expand, particularly thanks to the fast-growing Chinese economy. Although China's 12th five-year plan envisages a growth rate lower than the past at an annual rate of 7%, Chinese economy will continue to play a role of engine of growth in the region as well as in the world for some time to come. In addition, high technology, cutting-edge products, intensifying entrepreneurship, and accelerated globalization of Northeast Asia's most educated generation have contributed not only to the rise of the region but also to the deepening economic interdependence among three countries, expanding intra-regional trade and investment. Despite the growing economic interdependence among three countries and increasing transnational issues calling for collaborative action, the path to establishing and consolidating a sustained institution for cooperation in Northeast Asia is strewn with a host of obstacles. Low level of confidence among countries, lack of common identity in the region, and conflicting views on historical issues, North Korea's nuclear ambitions, disputes over territorial rights, distortion of regional history, and insensitivity of nationalistic political leaders to the sensibilities of neighbors who suffered at their hands are but a few of these obstacles. Healing the wounds of the history, and in so doing and through it, achieving a genuine reconciliation is a challenge Northeast Asian countries have yet to overcome if they are to move forward to build a common future of peace and prosperity in the region. Europe provides a shining example of reconciliation, confidence building, and cooperation, which led to eventually integration. It is entirely due to the European integration that the once hostile nations came to reconciliation and cooperation. In the center of this process and movement were idealists such as Jean Monnet, Robert Schuman, and the great political leaders such as Charles de Gaulle and Konrad Adenauer. Europe was fortunate to have such idealists and political leaders who were brave enough to chart a totally different path and course of history after the World War II. Unlike Europe, regretfully, Northeast Asia and interested parties are still fraught with looming security uncertainties. For one thing, the power configuration seems to be in tectonic transition from a rising China, reconsolidating Russia, a reassertive Japan, and nuclear program developing North Korea, and the United States with a renewed commitment to the region. Northeast Asia's dense population, great economic dynamism, and huge military buildup compound these uncertainties. Most experts agree that in coming decades, a rising China, with both its strengths and weaknesses, will constitute the single most critical strategic factor in Northeast Asia and beyond. It continues to enjoy phenomenal economic growth, lending credence to the Napoleonic prophecy, when China wakes up, all the world will tremble. Yet, structural weaknesses, such as found in state enterprises, financial sector with non-performing loans, and the disparity between the cities and rural areas, between coastal and inland regions, and between the rich and poor, to make Chinese economy still somewhat vulnerable. The seemingly intractable Taiwan issue is an enormous security burden as well, both domestically and internationally. Ladies and gentlemen, against this backdrop, I would like to express some of my views on how to conceptualize the community, formation of community, or a closer cooperative association of three countries in Northeast Asia, with particular reference to the challenge of climate change. It was within the frame of ASEAN Plus 3, started in 1997, and the East Asia community that tripartite cooperation in Northeast Asia took shape and quickened toward institutionalization. Three-country cooperation, which originated as a loose form from the ASEAN Plus 3, has seen a marked and diversified development around the turn of the century. Today, governments of Korea, China, Japan have many trilateral consultations and dialogue channels in various realms spanning trade, investment, finance, energy, environment, and education, to name just a few. In this vein, the first Korea-China-Japan summit held in Fukuoka in December 2008 was a milestone in the history of Northeast Asia. It was the first time in the region's long history, spanning several millennia, that highest political leaders of three countries came together and held their own summit. Up until then, the leaders always met at the margins of international or regional summit meetings. The leaders reached an agreement then that they would continue to hold the summit on a regular basis. It was a trailblazing event which opened a new chapter of tripartite cooperation and bring about trilateral relations to an even higher level in the years to come. However, I would like to see the summit meeting more focused on dealing with the crucial common issues. Ladies and gentlemen, in the modern world history, the Industrial Revolution has significantly expanded the economy and enriched society across the globe. Since the Industrial Revolution, fossil fuel has been the main driving force behind the continuous economic prosperity we have enjoyed. However, impacts of carbon dioxide emissions on the environment have long been neglected. This is why the world is embarking on a low-carbon revolution in the face of global challenge of climate change and environmental crisis. The three countries' greenhouse gas emissions are even weightier than their share of global GDP. China today is the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gas, 6.8 billion tons